All right. Okay. Yeah. So the math, the geometry, the shapes.
Yeah, talking about sacred geometry, and kind of the route that these people took to discovering these fundamental shapes that appear in everything, everywhere,
Okay.
and in patterns of their own. But yeah, like I said, this was done through advanced mathematics and kind of the. This is why I brought up Pythagoras. You
Mhm.
know, everyone thinks of Pythagoras as one of the fathers of modern math.
Right.
You know, you have a squared, b squared, c squared, but he's responsible for an endless amount of things, really.
Yeah.
And I mentioned musical octaves. These, and so this is actually where I'll go next. Is that
Is
um,
this still the meditation thing?
yeah, we'll get there.
Okay. Gotcha.
But so
Gosh.
not only is are these numbers leading you to these fundamental shapes that appear everywhere,
Yeah.
but then you follow the shapes, and the shapes start leading you towards sound.
Mm-hmm.
And all of these shapes have a specific resonant quality to them, and this can be measured mathematically. Um, I guess I would need to probably refresh myself on the mathematical portion to explain a little bit
For
better.
sure.
Um, but let's talk about the embodiment of this. A great example of the embodiment of sacred geometry. People can think of the pyramids. People can think of pyramids all over the world.
Mm-hmm.
Egypt is really laid out entirely with sacred
I
geometry.
see, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Washington D.C. is laid out in the very same way.
What do you mean, shape wise?
Yeah,
As
so
the
if
pyramid?
you had a bird's eye view flying over
Yeah.
Washington D.C., you would be able to see that it's matching the same measurements in its layout as specific temple areas in
Yeah.
ancient Egypt.
So okay.
Um,
And are these shapes like known shapes, like triangles and
yeah,
squares and shit
yeah,
like
they're
that? Okay.
actually really well known, and this is what I was kind of mentioning is they became so well known in these kind of hippie woo woo
Yeah. The crystal
areas.
shit.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the
Yeah.
people who are talking about crystals and their chakras and
Yeah.
things like that. They're
Yeah.
always the ones wearing pendants that have a sacred geometrical shape on them.
Yeah.
And it's because these. It's just because these certain shapes are identified with certain principles. The tree of life being identified with creation. That's a great example.
Yeah.
And so they incorporate it into their kind of woo-woo outlook on life.
Right.
And oftentimes that kind of distracts us from the reality of what these things are actually trying to show us.
Yeah.
But my point was another embodiment of these sacred geometrical principles can be found if you gone to the Getty Villa in Malibu.
I went there. Let me try to think here. Yes, in Malibu.
Yeah. So there's the
I don't
Getty
think I went
Museum.
to the. I went to the Getty. I don't think I
Okay.
went to the Malibu
Well,
one.
so the Getty Villa is also a museum.
Yeah.
It is, I believe, a former. It was the villa formerly owned by Jean-Paul Getty.
Okay.
At the time, if you did the dollar conversion to what his net worth would have been then, it's you're talking a billionaire. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
So this gets into what I'm talking about. These people who are at the top of the material world, realizing that there's more after the material world,
Right.
and then aspiring to.
And then, and it seems like, just to put it together, as soon as you get to that level, and then the whole secret society or mystery school thing is cool. Come in, we'll show you everything. We'll start to teach you about all this stuff.
rising through the ranks
Yeah.
to show that you are at a point of understanding where you can handle these higher concepts that they're
Mhm.
going to feed you more and more over time. Yeah.
Sounds Scientology-y.
Well, that's a fun thing to get into because
Right?
the Scientologists were definitely involved in this early.
Yeah.
This all I think would have been pre.
Here, actually, scooch that way a little bit.
Sure, yeah.
Oh yeah, nice, perfect.
There you go. But yeah, a funny thing, we were talking about NASA, and it's this is a common thing. That's a Mormon, a Nazi, and a Scientologist meet in a bar. What business do they start?
Oh, that's so funny.
NASA, yeah.
For real?
Yeah, for real. But so what I'm bringing up the Getty Villa because if you go to the Getty Villa, it's a replica villa of another massive mansion. It's almost like a palace-like mansion in
Yeah.
Italy, but this is an exact replica in Malibu.
Mm-hmm.
And when you go there are certain rooms that you can tell are different than other ones.
Mm-hmm.
If all the doors you walk through the villa are 10 feet tall, there's a certain room where the door is just maybe 6 feet. Some people might even have to duck to enter this room.
Word.
This is signifying that it's different than the layout of all the other rooms in this massive palace or whatever.
Right.
When you go into one of these rooms, you see on the floor is almost like a psychedelic, trippy pattern, and I can show you pictures of it.
Well, I think I've seen a lot of the DMT pictures.
Sure.
They're very like geometric.
Yeah.
What do they call it? Even crystally. There's like a phrase.
Fractal.
Fractal.
Yeah.
That's the word. Fractal.
Well, and so a lot of those shapes that you're seeing actually come out of sacred geometry.
Yes. Okay.
And how interesting that these sacred geometrical shapes are what people are seeing while they're tripping,
Right.
What I'm insinuating is that this was all identified long, long ago.
Of course.
And so people with enough money and means to create this in their own home did so.
Mm-hmm.
And so you go into this specific room I'm talking about where I believe they've had for a long time a statue of Hercules in there,
Mm-hmm.
and kind of like a shrine to him. But if you stand in the center of this circle in the room and you just do a humming tone, it's better if you're a singer or someone who can hit perfect pitch.
Yeah.
If you hit perfect pitch in that room, it's not going to sound like, us sitting in here and me hitting perfect pitch, which would still have an effect on your brain. It's why we appreciate good music. You can identify that someone is hitting a certain resonant tone.
Yeah.
That is having an effect on your brain,
Right.
an abnormal effect.
Yeah.
When you go into these rooms that are laid out with these sacred geometrical principles, this gets into what I was talking about, how each of these shapes has its own resonant quality.
Okay. So if you hit this note in that room,
yeah,
right? Each note, there's a note for the room.
So I can go in the room and go, oh, and but if I hit that perfect pitch, it's not even gonna sound like my voice. It's gonna, it'll start going like wah, 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 like in your ears. You get this weird effect. Another great example is when you go out into the courtyard, where they have this massive fountain out there.
Yeah.
It goes. It's like a reflecting pool that goes forever, whatever.
Yeah.
There's these bench seats off to the side, and they have that same shape. And if you stand in the center of the shape and you face the benches that people are meant to be sitting in, it sounds exactly like this. The way I'm talking and you're hearing it in your headphones is absolutely not how you hear me talk if we're sitting in this room.
Right.
If you go and stand in that circle and face the benches, that the shape is creating a resonant quality.
And if they talk?
And if I'm standing inside that talking, you're going to hear my voice like it's inside of your ears.
Wow.
Yeah. So you're starting to see, mathematics leads us to following, or leads us to discovering these shapes.
Mm-hmm.
And then the shapes lead us to discovering a relationship between the shapes and sound.
Mm-hmm.
And then those specific resonant qualities of the sound help you identify that this sound is different than other sounds I'm hearing.
Mm-hmm.
And those are often the sounds that if you're into meditation, if you're into anything like that, you have heard of binaural beats. You've heard of most of them on YouTube. If you find, they'll say resonating at 435 hertz or whatever. Mm-hmm. Okay, so those specific hertz levels that they're professing will do something beneficial to you for your meditation are specific. That's probably specific to an exact shape.
Okay.
That's where they're getting that number. 435 seems a little random, so it's coming from.
But it's trying to get you oriented with the shape. Okay.
Yeah. So this is all getting back to what I was doing with the meditation to have these kind of trip-like experiences, completely sober.
Right.
So I identified, that these secret societies, especially the Masons, the whole Masonry is the foundation of it is building these shapes, constructing architecture based on these sacred shapes.
Wow, that makes so much sense.
Right, and
all of a sudden that makes perfect. Yeah.
Right, and so if you could think of again, let's go back to the example of someone who's a singer. they're not going to just start. They're not just going to come into their performance and just start singing right away. They're
Mhm.
going to warm up and do the musical scale and get themselves,
Mhm.
prepared for it. So what I identified was that these people in these societies were practicing drawing all these shapes all the time. It's like it's their warm up basically.
Yeah.
So I started doing the same thing, and before long, I realized that there was a similar effect to this Tetris effect that I talked about, where you've played Tetris enough that you close your eyes and your brain is in that zone. You start to see these shapes falling in your mind.
Because you were drawing them?
Because but just
What do-
because of the focus. It's like you said, if you're at the beach watching the waves come in all day, you're just staring at
So
it.
what you were drawing shapes.
So I start drawing these shapes.
And
many
which
of these,
ones? Like what kind of shapes?
several of the a real well-known one. I mean, well-known is relative.
Yeah. In that world.
Yeah, right. Metatron's cube, like the fruit of life.
Okay.
This is supposed to be a shape that's identified. I believe I could be getting this wrong, but I believe this is identified with like the kind of template for how things grow.
Okay.
I believe that is the reference.
What does it look like?
Fruit of life. So basically, I can show you pictures of it, but basically you have
I could probably look.
several circles. There's a whole process to this. So
Sure.
it would start by me drawing several circles that are all specific measurements away
Don't they
from
call
each
this like the mandala? Is that kind of the
mandalas are it's a very similar concept.
Okay.
Yeah,
It's
for
like springy
sure.
and
the
here scooch back like
yeah
half a foot.
yeah those mandalas are that is what you're thinking of as fractal. I mean that really gets into this fractal nature, and you'll start to see other religious groups that have all religious groups, the cross in Christianity. People have been using the cross as a symbol of worship hundreds of years. But yeah, okay, that's Metatron's cube, but it's not. They haven't really highlighted the cube shape inside of that. So what you're seeing is like a Star of David. Okay. Again,
Right.
these religious symbols that
Right,
occur
right,
over and over mean much more than we
that's so
see
interesting.
that they mean. Right.
That is so interesting. So you're saying by if it just to maybe just make sure I know, you're basically saying that if you can engage in drawing these or focusing on them,
Yeah.
that by doing that you create the Tetris effect or the wave effect, and then by doing that, that's almost like it's resonating in your mind, and then that changes your brain frequency. I would imagine.
Absolutely. Well, and this is something, like I said, I've only been exploring for a few months.
Yeah.
And so, I'm getting these teachings from Freemasonry, which it's the oldest secret society that we're aware of. This goes back hundreds and hundreds of years.
Yeah.
And I'm spending, 6 months, trying to figure it out.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
I'm not going to be the peak source of
expert.
information. Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But what I can tell you is, I'll tell you exactly what I did. So, the shape that I was drawing, I believe, is associated with your mind's eye. It's supposed to be the cosmic eye.
The third eye thing.
Sure, yeah. I just thought it was a cool shape. I wanted to challenge myself. Many of these shapes.
Is that the one that I just saw?
No.
Oh, a different one.
Metatron's cube is another one I've done.
Okay.
Which, for if just another fun fact about that, Metatron's cube can be found in Leonardo da Vinci's The Last Supper.
Okay.
If you plaster it over The Last Supper, you can see where certain people fit inside of it, where
that's
people are
cool,
pointing out.
man.
Right, and actually, all of Renaissance art is completely filled with sacred geometry, and you would never see it if you didn't know the shapes you're looking for. But I mean, we could go through every one of Da Vinci's paintings, and I can show you the circle.
And then
the
this
square,
almost
the
all of a sudden
triangle,
relates to like astronomy, probably, or astrology.
all of it relates to astrology. Yeah,
right?
absolutely.
Yeah,
for
that makes
sure.
perfect sense now.
Yeah.
You start shaping the stars, and you're like, oh yeah, that's stuff. That means something.
Sure, yeah. Well, and so going back to my example of what I did was I drew this cosmic eye, and I intentionally chose to draw a more complicated shape. it was just me trying to
Just going for it.
Just going for it. Right. But I'm glad I did, because
Yeah.
there's other shapes that you can draw maybe within an hour. You could complete one.
Mm-hmm.
This one, for example, took me like 6.5 hours. So so for that long, I'm sitting there focusing on it. It's just like if you were playing.
And are you
Tetris
like
for
drawing
that
it,
long.
redrawing it? Are you trying to
No,
like
so
actually nail it?
What
or?
you're doing is you're taking the fundamental tools of a Freemason. You're taking the compass, which
Okay.
is the
You're not
the
freehanding
pencil.
it.
No.
Gotcha.
No, it's all extremely specific,
Mm.
extremely measured. Yeah, so you're taking the compass and the right angle.
Mhm.
So that's where you get that ruler,
Mhm.
the 45-degree angle, and then the compass. And those are opposites of each other, and
Mhm.
that is kind of the point. Is
Mhm.
they're all of these physical practices that you're doing also have metaphysical symbology behind them.
That's
right.
crazy.
Well, and so I spend, let's say, 6.5 hours drawing this cosmic eye.
Yeah.
Okay. I finished it. For the next probably 12 hours, I'd go back every once in a while and just look at it because I was proud of it, and I thought like, oh, this is cool that I made this thing. The following night, after spending all that time doing it and spending a lot of time staring at it because I just thought it was cool to look at,
Mm-hmm.
I realized it was probably late in the evening. Like I said, sober. I finished playing with my dog or something. I sat down on the couch and I like rubbed my eyes. And sometimes when you rub your eyes, you'll see,
Yeah.
something.
That's
specks
actually,
or all.
you're right. No, you'll see fractally things sometimes.
Sure.
when you do
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So I rub my eyes, and all of a sudden I'm seeing these sacred geometrical shapes, and they're kind of moving. And I thought,
With your eyes open.
closed.
Oh,
So
closed.
while
Okay.
I'm rubbing my eyes, I notice that I'm seeing
Yeah.
sacred geometry. Just like when you close your eyes at night and you've been playing Tetris, you see
Yeah,
Tetris
yeah.
shapes. Same thing.
Mm-hmm.
And I wasn't particularly in the mood to meditate or anything like that, but I just thought, well, this is kind of different and notable.
Yeah.
Maybe I should sit down and close my eyes for 10 minutes and just try to meditate, So this is what I did. I sat down, I put, because I wasn't in the mood to meditate, I thought I'd help myself out a little bit. I put some beats on,
Mm-hmm.
put one of those binaural beat things while they
Mhm.
play,
Mhm.
one of these harmonic tones. And just sat on my couch and kind of went through the meditation the way I normally do it.
Yeah.
And really what that is, what I'm working towards in every meditation, even if they're different or I have different intentions,
Yeah.
what I'm working towards is that kind of letting go element that we discussed a little bit before.
Mhm.
And even if you are being intentional, this is the fine line you're walking between meditating for an intention, but not caring about the results.
Okay.
It's what's going to keep you from letting go, and letting go of what you want is what's going to give you what you want.
100%. Yeah.
So again, you get into this dual nature of the whole thing.
So I was at the Jordan Peterson, to bring him up.
Mhm.
He frames it in the words chaos and order.
Yeah.
And-
That's a great way. And these are, again, those are, I mean,
And that life is in between.
Yeah.
The real space of existence is between those. Because
Right.
when you're in chaos, don't worry, order's coming. When you're in
Mhm.
order, don't worry, chaos is coming.
and
So-
chaos and order might be the best breakdown of these things,
Because it lacks good and bad.
right.
It just says
And
these are
and
what's
good,
happening.
And good and bad are these archetypal ways of
Chaos
thinking.
is bad, but it's not really.
Yeah, just first to cover. So, what I'm about to explain is during this meditation, I received a intense visual, auditory, sensory trip.
Mhm. What did it look like?
Um, it looked like all kinds of it. Okay, the best way I can describe this, and these are other techniques that I practice a lot.
Yeah.
Are if you think of the way, if you want to draw a picture of something, and not sacred geometry, not
Just anything.
just your friend or
Yeah.
your house or whatever, what are you gonna do? You're not gonna just start putting your pen to paper and just start drawing. You're gonna sit there and you're gonna think about what does the thing look like.
You're gonna visualize it.
You're gonna start to visualize it in your brain. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, well, so you're seeing a great example is I can walk you through just a really quick. Okay, so think about being in the house. If you grew up maybe in the same house for a long time,
Mhm.
like if your family didn't move around, you might have grown up in the same house for a long time.
Mm-hmm.
You think about, okay, maybe 10 years ago you were in this house and you're sitting in the living room couch, you're watching TV, you get hungry, you decide to get up, and you stand up, and then you walk from the living room, maybe through a threshold into your kitchen. As I'm saying this, your mind is filling in the gaps.
Mhm.
You're starting to see what I'm describing, okay? it's not in front of you, it's not in front of your eyes, yet you can see it, you
100%.
can describe it, you know the colors of things.
Right.
Okay, well, the same thing is happening in a dream, right?
Yeah.
When you're dreaming.
Young thinks we're dreaming all the time. You ever heard that?
Yeah, and so I mean, this does kind of get into that a little bit.
It's almost like the visualizations are you're dreaming again.
Reality really is convincing yourself that the dream is normal, that you're not dreaming, right?
Yeah.
But yeah,
but
right,
really,
it
it's just
is
a
all-
new other state of perception.
Right,
It's not
right.
any more real than the other one.
Right. Well, and especially if you realize that, you know, the brain really is the brain can't see anything. The brain can't feel anything. It's
Right.
it's inside your head, locked in there.
Mhm.
Yet, so really, all it is just a receiver for signals.
Yes.
And then what it does is those signals come in and it hallucinates something for you to survive, basically, based on the signals that are happening.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So
It's all body oriented.
right. And,
Not
and so if you think of your brain as this receiver, you can kind of hack this thing. And
that's right.
right. And
Yeah.
and use
That's
it.
what's happening with like law of attraction thinking too.
Sure. Yeah.
Right.
But and the point is that you're using them. All of these faculties are available to you, but the reason why we're all experiencing reality in the same way is because what's the most fundamental thing for our reality is surviving.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So all of us are on the same page with that. All of us are trying to survive. So all of these faculties we possess, like this imaginatory stuff I'm getting into with you, or the dreaming stuff, dreams are not their own thing. Your imagination is not its own thing. Your memory is not its own thing.
Yeah.
You are being witness to the faculties that are available in your brain to create dreams, to create memory, to create your imagination, okay? And you're hacking your brain by using it in a way that's not essential for survival anymore. You're removing your ego. Your ego's whole job. People always want to say like, I want to be spiritual, so I get rid of my ego. Well, no, your ego has an absolutely essential purpose.
Yeah.
And it gets back to this dual thing. Its purpose is to keep you alive. But because we live in a wonderful world where we're sitting in a comfy studio in a chair with
It's
microphones,
not as needed.
we don't need it all the time.
I think
So-
about that all the time.
Yeah, so let's start taking some of that energy and hacking our brains and start receiving signals that aren't necessary for survival, but are
they
necessary for these higher level questions that we're asking.
One of the things that I thought was so interesting when he was breaking down that the drive is all coming from those basic needs.
Mm-hmm.
One of the basic human things it is what makes us progressive
Mm-hmm.
is the faculties or the neurophysiology related to this natural thing for us, which is exploration.
Mm-hmm.
Because in the unknown is information or goods or something that can help the progress and further the survival element. Also in the unknown is scary things that could kill you. But that's that weird thing about human beings is it's an innate thing to explore, to expand means of survival,
mm-hmm.
and to go into the unknown.
Mm-hmm.
So in a weird way, to spend more time exploring that new space is a new way to explore, which is our nature, find what's going on in that unknown, because that can help us. You know, it's all based on kind of bringing it back to a better state of existence.
Right. Well, and so, but you've identified something important. So what is going to cause you to start thinking in those new ways? You know,
Okay.
Change is going to cause you to start, to say, okay, what you've identified is right. Survival, the ego is essential for survival, and that's covering this whole one realm of everything we're thinking about.
Yeah.
And what you're saying is that even though it seems counterintuitive, thinking outside of survival is actually a key to our long-term survival.
Exactly.
Right. And
That's what he was saying. The metastructures, the further the longer you want to affect a future positive outcome,
mhm.
the more you have to suspend the immediate needs of the hypothalamus.
Sure, exactly.
Right.
Right.
So
and this is the dual nature. These are the two things that are constantly clashing all the time, and they make that is the change that has to be there for you to start thinking these other thoughts.
And that's so frustrating because you feel like in that conflict, that's where it actually feels like, oh, I'm not being practical enough.
Yeah.
I'm being too woo-woo. I need to take care of my fucking
The
bills.
conflict is where all the stress comes from.
And you feel stressed, but it's like, you're almost like making it like it's a peaceful idea to be like, no, it's good. It's okay to
It's
to know that you're going here to go explore, but then also you need to go like pay your rent.
Well, and so if you want to get into archetypes, what you're talking about is identifying things as good or bad, and where something is changing or something's uncomfortable. We tend to think this is bad,
Right.
and that's very societal.
There's no need to do that, right?
There's no need to.
It's
do
ambivalent. Change is
Right.
ambivalent. You can decide if it's good or
it.
bad
Right.
based on perception, basically, right?
It's all perception.
Yeah, yeah.
Exactly. So a great way to describe this is, I've had family members in my life die. Okay.
Yeah.
This is kind of, I bring up death because it's kind of the ultimate force of
Right,
this
right,
thing
right,
that
right.
I'm talking about. At the time, you think it's bad. You start saying, why me? Why them? What, all these things.
Yeah, it's the one that's the easiest to agree is bad.
Yes.
Right? It's an event.
Right. Well, it's the ultimate. It's
Yeah.
the most final. It's it's kind of the ultimate archetype of bad.
Well, you could say you could get cancer. I could get cancer, and you could. So change and chaos is the unknown,
Mhm.
and you could go. Here's an event, and it's easy to say it's bad, but really, something I learned was that like any change, any chaos it's neither bad nor good. No matter what, it's
Mhm.
all something you can perceive as positive.
Mhm.
And so like cancer would be something you'd be like, well, an optimistic person. So let's say you're a freak of optimism. You can easily find a bunch of good things about it.
Sure.
You'd be like, you're going to grow. You're going to beat it.
Mhm.
You're going to be a different person. You're going to come out better. You're going to help a bunch of people. You're also maybe going to die, but you're going to live the best last year of your life. You can do all these weird,
Mhm.
but death is one of those ones that's really hard
Mhm.
to argue. It's good.
Yeah. Well,
Right?
right, and it really seems like it's because it's the ultimate thing. It's the hardest
Yes.
thing for us to face. But what we don't realize is death is the ultimate catalyst to change. When, like I mentioned, when someone close to you dies, you start questioning everything.
Right.
Whatever the path is that you're on that you might be so committed to,
Right.
we all tend to fall into this thing where we start going, wow, is this really who I want to be if I die tomorrow? Would I be happy? All these types of things.
Right.
But this is important to identify because we can stop labeling these things as bad. Instead, we can start to label them as change, And when you start getting into archetypes, this is where you start getting into the idea of the devil or the ultimate bad. He is
Yeah.
almost synonymous with this
Pure
death
evil.
or the bringer of death or
Yeah.
And yeah, once you can kind of stop shunning these things that we're labeling as bad, and you
Mhm.
start bringing them into your life and trying to see what you can learn from them, everything changes.
Man.
And I'm not special. I'm not the first one to identify this.
No. Yeah. These are.
What's really interesting is how many people and famous musicians have identified this. And if you want to listen to a song that kind of details what I'm talking about with change and the devil of change, listen to "Sympathy for the Devil" by the Rolling Stones.
Yeah.
I mean, this is what the song
Is
is
it "Pleased
about.
to Meet You"? That song?
I hope you guess my name.
I love that song.
And
That's
then
such a
the
song.
next line is, "What's puzzling you is the nature of my game." And it's because when we, through our whole lives, we're developing this idea of the ultimate evil, the devil archetype,
Right.
this change that we don't want. Here he comes when you finally meet him and guess his name. Your next step is realizing, oh, he's not this thing that I had built up for years and years and years based on my perception. This is a necessary thing, and this is confusing me. This is the nature of his game is starting to puzzle me. I'm trying to guess it.
It's fundamentally shaking up your assumptions.
Yeah, sure, exactly. And so I've had to do a lot of this work with within myself of facing kind of my fear of things I think are bad.
How do you do that?
And also, a lot of that is done just through, things like listening to podcasts, listening to other people's perspectives, starting to reframe your mind, to the point where I was able to reframe my mind to a point where a lot of things that would seem bad to most people would happen to me, and I would respond to them well because I saw it as a moment of change or a pivotal point or whatever.
Information to be gathered.
Yeah, exactly. An opportunity. It's opportunity.
I can learn now, and this is going to change my framework of understanding for the world, and I'll now know more.
Yeah.
And that's good.
Sure. Yeah.
And it could suck,
Mm-hmm.
but I know it's so interesting, man. I couldn't be more. It's like I've just been thinking about this stuff.
Yeah. Well, and so through that kind of work within myself, I came to a point where the only thing I really felt fear of anymore in life was death in some way, either my
Right.
death and how that would affect my fiance and my dog,
Oh, you're
or
engaged. Cool.
or their death would affect me. This was kind of the last thing I was holding on to.
It's the hardest one.
And it's the hardest one. It makes sense. It's the ultimate. It's the final. It's whatever. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So what I started doing, and this will sound psychopathic to
Sure.
people,
No, I
is in these meditations, sober, like I said, I would get to the point, it takes about 10 minutes. I would get to the point where I would become fully relaxed, fully letting go. And it always, by minute 10 to 12 is where I've been sitting there, meditating, and I'm going, what the fuck? Like, I'm being calm and patient and letting go. Why isn't anything happening? And then, like, you realize, oh, like, there's this thing I'm holding in my neck, or my face is a little tight or whatever. And you start to relax a little bit. And then that's where things start happening after that.
Yeah.
Instantly.
Yeah.
I don't know the exact science behind it. I have to assume it's just because you're lowering all the noise that's happening in your brain all the time.
I've heard a guy, Joe Dispenza. Have you ever heard of this guy?
No.
He's super interesting. He's a little woo-woo, but he's neuro.
Sure, and it's hard not to be when you start getting into this
Right.
stuff, because we don't always have the ways to explain them in the most logical, sensible sounding.
They're trying to. So many more scientific
You gotta
types
try to.
are getting more
Mhm.
scientific about the woo-woo on purpose, and like even trying to like never say buzzwords that sound woo-woo.
Buzzwords,
and
yes,
and
yes.
let's not even use that word, and I'll say a completely different word. I'm saying the same thing, but now you can hear it. And he was talking about, because he's a neuroscientist, he can talk about what's so simply happening is that when you close off, especially if you do, you take sound away, you take sight away, you take movement away, the motor cortex calms down. All of these shutdowns create your mind still has a bunch of power, and it just channels more to the internal world. And the internal world is a powerful world. There's a lot going on there. There's visualization there. You can actually gain, we can gain senses in that internal world. But the key is that after it's like when you're laying in bed and it takes you 10 minutes to fall asleep.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a time thing.
Yeah.
Time is actually helpful, and it is part of it. It's just that if you don't move or sit or anything, all those things don't activate those parts of the brain and take the power of, that power, and it transfers it to the one area that is being focused on, which is maybe visualization or thoughts or something.
Well, and this gets
the
right
internal
back
world.
to it gets.
So
right
there
back
is a
to-
science to that. It's
Yeah, absolutely.
It's just like when you go for a run, your heart's beating fast, and it keeps beating fast for like 2 to 3 minutes after you're done running. You know what I mean? There's a lag to the material world.
Sure, and this is getting right back to this thing I was talking about, as the brain kind of being like a conduit for sensation.
Yes.
For signals coming inside. So what you're doing is you're gonna just shut all those signals down.
Yeah.
There's still gonna be signals inside, and those signals you're receiving all the time. But because you're letting all the other signals in that are dependent on your survival, those take priority, and you're not even noticing the other signals that are always coming
That's
in.
exactly right. They say like Jung's idea of the constant dream would be like the way I think I thought of it, but it's also like somebody else hinted at what it's really happening is, let's say the dream's always happening, and then but when you're awake, the other stuff's louder. It just is. It's the way the senses are. It's actually just a louder noise, analogously. So similar to if you were in a quiet, you're at your house, quiet, you can hear the fridge.
Yeah.
But if you have 10 people over and music playing, you couldn't hear that fridge if you tried to.
Great example.
And so
Fantastic,
that's
yeah.
what's happening with the senses. When you take the 5 away, nobody's at the party. You can start to hear the internal stuff.
Sure,
And
exactly.
and we're like, what's meditation? Like, it's that.
Yeah.
Do it for 10 minutes. You can't not be in a different space.
Yeah, at 100%. So that's what I began doing and working through that. And then I finally, I maybe graduated to the next level where I would know what to expect. I'd know how long that it would take. And so I would go, okay, about 10 to 12 minutes, my body's going to shut down. And then what happens after that is you have a full sense that you're in your body and you're where you are, but you start to lose all your kind of physical sensation. It's you've shut down your hearing, you've shut down your sight,
you feel like a little nugget floating in empty space.
Kind of, yeah. I mean, you definitely Right. Yeah, you kind of you lose the feeling of like the weight of yourself
Mm-hmm.
against the couch or whatever it is you're sitting
It
and
all
laying on.
disappears. Yeah.
Right. And so when I got better at this and this started I could achieve this on a consistent basis, I had a surprise happen. I thought that it would be totally blissful after that, and maybe I would experience some senses and they would be great. What instead happened was every time I would get to that point, I would start getting the sense of, if you've ever experienced sleep paralysis, this is something a lot of people are
I
aware
have
of,
one time.
and
I thought it was a demon.
you think it's a demon, and you have this impending sense of doom.
Bro, yeah.
You know
I just
that
got chills.
oh yeah,
I remember that.
If there's a one-way route to chills, is talking about sleep paralysis, because this is something across cultures, across the world, that everyone experiences in one way or another.
Right. And it's so mysterious.
And it's so mysterious, but at the same time, people are there's the same qualities to it. A lot of times there are these shadow figures involved. The physical sensations, the fear,
the doom,
the horror. The best way I can describe it is like, I've had sleep paralysis several times, especially as a kid. I used to get it a lot, and there is not something that exists in the real world that could make me that scared.
Bro. You are so right.
Yeah, it's like the most pure distilled terror that you can possibly experience.
You're so
Yeah,
I've actually never heard anybody really go out of their way to say it like that.
Yeah.
It is. Yeah, it's the purest fear I've ever felt.
Yeah,
it is.
Absolutely.
I love that you said distilled, because it's,
Distilled.
you know what it's like, and it's almost even perfect, as we're saying we're taking away all awareness, and it's
Mhm.
almost like all you're on is fear.
Yeah,
That you have
absolutely.
one thing happening.
Yeah, you're mainlining it.
and it's like,
Mhm.
oh,
And
it's
you
brutal.
can't move. You're totally helpless. It's
Wow.
the helpless nature of this is also contributing to this intense fear. You know?
Yeah.
Well, so
you started having that?
So I'm chilling on my couch. I'm like getting relaxed,
Looking
and
for the
everything.
bliss.
Yeah, looking for the 10 minutes, 12 minutes. I go, oh, my body's letting go. Suddenly, I'm getting these same type of feelings.
Yeah.
You know, this intense, impending doom. You know, something's gonna happen. So I reacted like anyone would at first. You know, I would shut it down. I would go, okay, I'm done meditating. I'm not going to do it anymore.
So differently than sleep paralysis, you could get out of it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
You'd
get in it, but you could also be like, I want out, because
Right.
sleep paralysis is like you're stuck.
You're stuck.
Yeah.
Right. And I could identify that, like, oh, this is a familiar feeling. Oh yeah, it feels like that time that I got scared out of my mind.
And it's hand on the stove. I don't like this. This is
right.
bad.
Exactly.
Outta
Take
here.
it off.
Yeah.
Right. I'll get out. But just the way I am, I'm a glutton for punishment. So I didn't just stop
Well,
meditating.
it's so interesting too, right?
Right.
You're like, ooh, I have control.
Well, yeah, and you realize you're tapping into something.
Yeah.
It's like something is happening when I do this, this, and this. Like I said, you kind of have a formula. When I do this, this, and this, something starts happening.
Cool. So cool.
I'm bringing this up because we were talking about these archetypes of evil, these things that make us feel that way, this terror, this, varying degrees of whatever horror you experience, you know?
Yeah.
And so I started to wrestle with these ideas. And like I said, the last thing I really had to wrestle with was this idea of death. That was kind of the last one that I was holding on to as a source of fear. You realize, like, no, this thing exists, so I'm afraid of it. Really, the thing exists, and you're focused on it, and that creates the fear that you have fear after it. You have to know that it's there to have the fear.
It's still just as much just change.
Exactly.
It's just a scarier one, but
not,
the same.
And not even it has a purpose. It's necessary. Change is always necessary.
Mm-hmm.
We are often so thankful later on. The hindsight being 2020.
Always.
You can think. I'm sure everyone at this very moment could think of many points in their life where they thought it was doom.
Mm-hmm.
And then they realized that this was a pivotal moment for me. I became a different person because of it.
And better.
Exactly.
Mostly, a lot of times.
Yeah. Sure.
There's an interesting thing that your psych degree.
Yeah.
But where it actually collapses you, where chaos can be so chaotic that you don't recover.
Right.
That can right. So there's something there too, right?
It could, and this is something I'll get into, is accepting the challenges of life. Oftentimes, and I think this is really a societal thing. The world we live in today is, like I said, is very comfortable. We're far from death. Mm-hmm. It's not in our face at every moment. That is why we look at it as so unfortunate. It's like, we worked so hard to make sure this thing didn't happen to you, and now it did. This is the worst thing that could happen. Um, I kind of forgot where I was going with that, but basically, what I'm doing,
Death.
right. So I go back into these meditations. I'm experiencing this sense of doom or whatever, and I start to explore it. I start to let it come in more, and I start to reframe my mind of what is evil. What are the things that make me feel this way?
While you're in the impending doom thing?
Well, so I was doing a lot of this thinking while not meditating, you
Okay,
know,
okay,
and
gotcha.
and reading about, good and evil, the balance, the requirement of both, whatever.
Yeah.
And it was coming to grips with that and accepting that this is a necessary thing and that I don't need to feel this fear from it,
Mm-hmm.
where I could then get into a meditation and start to let it in. And when I got into the meditation and start to let it in, it gets cheesy. You have to, if you're gonna be experiencing archetypes, the way I have a conversation with these archetypes, or the way I'm gonna relate to them, has to be archetypal in nature.
Right.
So I think of, okay, well, if I'm gonna not be fearful and running from this scary thing, what's the opposite? Well, maybe I just give it a big hug. Like, what what is the archetype of the opposite? It's a hug, something loving, something whatever. So I get into the meditation. I start to have that feeling. I decide not to back out. You let it come, and it eventually, for me, I don't know if it would happen for other people. For me, it started to manifest as kind of a physical representation, something I could see, something that I might be able to kind of feel or hear, and really it did begin as that kind of shadow figure that that a lot of people experience in the sleep paralysis. And I just jumped in and gave that shadow figure a hug.
In your mind?
In my mind.
Yeah.
This is all meditation. I'm
you.
laying down, my eyes closed.
You embraced it.
I embrace it in my mind, and not only do I embrace it, but I thank it. I say,
right.
Hey,
I love you.
I understand. I understand that you are doing a job that I couldn't do. I couldn't do your job. You do a job that's absolutely necessary. You're the one creating all this change, the beautiful things we experience from change in life, and yet we're all gonna say, like, you're horrible, we hate you, all this, right? And you're gonna bear the burden of this giant responsibility,
and then that being is understood.
And then the second that happened, that's when things really started to go a different route for me during these meditations.
Cool, man. That's
no
really cool.
longer would I experience the fear in the same way and have to back out. Instead, I would embrace this thing. I would thank it for the job it's doing. And then after that is where I would be able to start to receive information from it, or visual projections from it, voices. The first big one that I experienced was really startling and almost took me out of the whole thing. Was, I went through this process, like I said. I embraced the being. I thanked it for what it was doing and opened myself up to what it had to show me. And up until that point, it had all been very physical, or like I described, like a sense of doom. That's not physical, like if you got touched, but it's like you're sensing something. Okay, so up until that had been pretty much the extent of it. I could get a vibe, if you will, but it was this moment where I went through all these things, and instead of a vibe, as clear as you saying something to me, I heard something, and it wasn't my own voice. It wasn't like the voice in your head of your own thoughts.
It's a transmission.
It was a different voice.
Yeah.
And the voice said, "What do you want from us?" And it came out of nowhere. To the point, like I heard it as crystal clear as someone saying it in my ear, and it was startling enough that it almost like took me out of the whole meditation thing, And then that was followed up by me thinking, like, shit, I wasn't prepared for that. I don't know what to say. And so I'm like fumbling to try, okay, well, you're just doing this for good intentions and you want to help other people and help yourself. So, and it wasn't good enough. I could feel that voice fading away, whatever that was that asked me that thing.
Right.
But this changed it all for me. This is where I started to really consider what so much of this woo-woo stuff is referring to, or people talking about, these rituals where they speak with interdimensional whatever, This is where I started to go, okay, I think there's something to this.
I see what's happening.
Yeah.
And this now goes down to like ancient, this is biblical, right? This is the Holy Spirit. This is
pre-biblical by thousands of years.
Sure. But even this isn't even that. It's crazy, but it's also like, yeah, this has been being done for a while.
This has been being done for a while, and not by guys like me.
Right.
This is what I was getting into before. This is being done by the people who shape the world we live in.
Right.
This is being done by Isaac Newton. This is being done by Plato and Socrates and Aristotle. This is
Right.
being done by George Washington and Ben Franklin and the founding fathers of the country.
Mm-hmm.
It's not just people. It's the people who have shaped the entire way we see life
Christ,
today.
in theory.
All of it. All of these people were involved in these same things with the same intention.
Think like Tesla, probably.
Oh yeah,
Probably,
if you want to
right?
get deep into, oh yeah, Tesla for sure.
That dude's a nut. I love it.
Yeah, and his whole thing was.
I have to wrap
following
it
the
up, my
numbers.
dog.
For sure. Yeah,
I'm gonna stop it just because I want to give you this. You're gonna love this.
for sure. Yeah, I'd love it.
The only thing I'm gonna do differently. I just want to show you because I didn't want to
Yeah.
interrupt you a bunch. I would have you move back further,
Oh, okay.
and then just because it totally changes the visual.
I see. Yeah, right. I see.
Now I'm gonna send you this video. You'll see the whole time the mic's kind of been.
Yeah, right. No,
but,
I expect
But
it.
now you'll see. Get to the end to this part. I'm talking.
Yeah.
You'll look at it now.
Yeah, terrific.
I just wanted you to have a sample of it.
Sure, I appreciate it. Thank you very much.